Hey, Jazzy, how you doing?
Hi, Uncle Ebony. I was just wondering, will I grow up to be a big, strong, Texas Jumbo Forever guitar pick just like you?
It doesn't matter how big you are, son. It matters what you're made of. And inside of you is some of the most exotic woods from across the world. Each exotic wood makes a completely different tone, and no string gnaws like plastic. We were brought right here to America to be handmade by Luthier R.S. Paul. He's an expert in exotic woods. And if you click below right now, you're going to get 25% off of your order. Any other questions, Jazzy?
Yeah, why did Aunt Babinga get mad because you gave her crabs on her birthday?
Today here at Robert's Guitar Dungeon, I'm going to give you 6 tips to improve your guitar tone. I thought that it would be fun to compile together a list of things that I have learned over the years from various different sources that have helped me to come closer to achieving the tone that I've always wanted to achieve. And as it turns out, that as I have grown and over the years, the tone that I have always wanted to achieve is not even remotely close to what I originally thought that it should be. However, there are a lot of mistakes that guitar players make. And as I mentioned, these are just some things that I have learned over the years that have helped me a lot that I would like to pass on to you. But before I do that, I would like to take a moment and give a brief plug to my good friend Tony Ramsey's new YouTube channel, which you can find. I'll post a link to it up here in the card as well as down in the description below. If you've been watching my channel for a while and the name Tony Ramsey sounds familiar, the theme music that you hear in all of my videos was all written and recorded by none other than Tony Ramsey. And Tony has started his own channel, his own guitar channel, among a couple of other interests that he has, that he also covers in his new channel. And, Tony's a great musician, a great guitar player, and I have never seen him. There's not an electronic device on this planet that he can't fix. So please, go check out Tony's channel. I think you'll really enjoy it. Now, 6 tips to improve your guitar tone. Let's get to it. Number 1, turn up those mids. Most amplifiers have a mid-range control, and mids in the guitar world are very, very important. And the reason why, particularly in a live situation, or any mix for that matter, is there is a certain set of frequencies that guitar needs to be very prominent in order to be heard. And if you have too much high end, it's going to bleed in too much and get covered up by the snare drums and the cymbals and the things of that nature. And if you have too much low end, it's going to get buried by the bass drum and the floor toms and the bass guitar and other low frequency instruments. That's why mid-range is so important, because that is where guitar needs to sit in a mix. Again, as I mentioned, in order to be heard. I mentioned this one first because this was probably the biggest mistake that I made. And every amplifier that I had, I would immediately turn the mids all the way down, turn the bass and the treble all the way up. Because, to me, that was a heavier tone, and it sounded like Metallica. Reminding me of Metallica, it sounded like Metallica, and that's who I wanted to sound like, particularly as a young teenage metalhead who grew up on Metallica. Let me give you an example of why mid-range frequency is so important. I am plugged into the Marshall JCM 900 that you see here behind me. The EQ is set where I normally have it set when I use this amp. The mid-range control itself is set to about a little past 2 o'clock, maybe 2:30. Not quite 3 o'clock, but it's about roughly 75% of the way. Now, again, for the sake of example, I've turned the mid control all the way down, so the mids are scooped all the way out. I mean? The tone altogether just completely disappears. You know, and again, in a live situation with no mid-range to fill in the set of frequencies where the guitar needs to sit, you might as well not even be there. Number 2, back off on the gain, kiddos. I've talked about this before, and this is something that I am making a conscious effort to try to change in my own guitar tone today, which is turn down the gain. And what I have discovered is that by turning the gain all the way up and adding more distortion, you also take away from the clarity of the individual notes and the overall clarity and percussiveness of the tone. By turning it down, those things become a lot easier to hear. The other thing that I have found in turning down my gain is that my mistakes become more prominent and much easier to hear. By being able to hear my mistakes easier, I'm able to focus on those things and learn to correct them. So, not only will turning down the gain enhance your guitar tone in the long run, again, particularly in a band situation, but it will also make you a better guitar player. This is the main reason why I have been trying to train my ear to get used to playing with less gain, is, again, to further improve my playing. I have mentioned Dave Mustaine before in the past, as he is a great example of this. When you listen to just about any Megadeth record, particularly Rust in Peace. Rust in Peace is one of the greatest metal distortion albums ever recorded. However, he's not using, neither one of those guitar players actually are using a whole lot of distortion. It's all about playing style and songwriting and overall aggression and just those are things that make metal. Let me show you what I'm referring to with an example from my Panama Fuego X. This is a setting on channel 2, which is the rhythm section, which is still a really high gain channel, with the gain all the way up. Now, here is the exact same thing, but with the gain turned down to about, I got it backed off to about 11 o'clock. So I hope you can see in that example there that there is a lot more clarity. You're able to hear a lot more of the details of the things that I was playing, just by a simple adjustment of the gain knob. Number 3, you might not need to play quite as loud as you might think. If you follow these other 2 simple rules, again, turning up the mids is going to allow you to be heard in the mix a lot easier than you would otherwise, and turning down the gain is going to improve your clarity. If you follow those 2 rules, you might find yourself you won't need quite as much volume as you once did before. And yes, I know there's exceptions to what I'm getting ready to say, but the vast majority of sound engineers know what they're doing. If they're telling you to turn your amp down because you're just way too loud in comparison to everybody else, you generally need to listen to them. And as a guitar player, I get it. There are some amps you just have to crank them in order to get the right tone out of it that you need. However, that still doesn't mean that it has to be at ear-piercing volumes. If you're in a situation where you're arguing with the sound guy, you might want to think about carrying a small passive attenuator with you in your guitar case. This particular one is a Carl's Custom Speaker Soak. Carl's Custom Guitars Speaker Soak. I did a video on this about a year and a half or so ago, and maybe even longer than that now. But this is a very handy device. It works great, and I think these things cost about $40 or $50 brand new. These are not expensive. There's plenty of other companies that make models very similar to this. Again, they're not expensive. They're easy to carry with you. If the sound guy's begging you to turn it down, but you got to have it up, this is a great compromise. One last note on that one. Getting on the bad side of the sound guy is not necessarily a real great idea. You do not want to piss off the one guy that's got the power to isolate you and your sound over everybody else. Don't believe me? Just ask Courtney Love. Number 4, play through a Marshall. Number 4, know your amp's tones. And, play through a Marshall thing was a joke because, even though I happen to love Marshalls, I know they're not for everybody. But one reason why Marshalls are so popular and have been one of, if not the most popular amp brand for decades now, is because of their warm tones that are great for so many different genres of music, and that's why they've been around for as long as they have, and that's why so many people like them. That said, as I mentioned, they're not for everybody, but the important thing is to know what your amp sounds like and to know its strengths and weaknesses. For example, the reason why I mention Marshalls is because there's one thing that they do very, very well, and as I said, that is warm rock tones. However, even though I have used my 900 on several occasions on this channel for pedal demos and things of that nature, one thing they are not known for is a clean channel. I think this one's an exception, but generally speaking, Marshalls are not the cleanest sounding amps in the world. So, for that reason, that's why I don't use my Marshall JCM 900 as my primary amp to demo pedals with, because it's just not the cleanest signal in the world. It's not even the cleanest signal that I have in this room. Conversely, my Randall RD20 that I do use for most of my demos has a fantastic clean sound. Now, the limitations of that amplifier are the clean channel on that amplifier is actually dangerously close to a Fender. It's very clean and very bright. The distortion channel, on the other hand, is very, very dark sounding. And while both channels sound great, they are, they're definitely EQ'd way differently. The challenge there is both channels actually share the same EQ. So when doing what I need to do with it, I need to take into consideration which channel I'm using and what other elements I am factoring in with it. As in, if I'm using the clean channel, I really need to be using a warmer sounding guitar and maybe pedals that aren't quite as bright sounding in order to balance everything out. When all the elements in your guitar signal are balanced out tone wise, it's going to produce a much more pleasing sonic experience for the listener in most cases. Number 5, speaking of amplifiers, start with the EQ flat. Generally speaking, on any amplifier in the world, with every single knob on it set at 12 o'clock, that is what would be considered as the default sound of that amplifier. One mistake that I made for years is that any amplifier that I sat down and plugged into to play, be it at home or in a store or at a friend's house or whatever it was, the first thing I would do is plug my guitar in, turn on the power, tweak the knobs to, the EQ settings that I'm familiar with on my own amplifier, then flip it off at standby, and start playing through it and make more adjustments from there. When you start with all the knobs straight up in the air at 12 o'clock, again, that is the amplifier's default setting. And from there, if you plug in from there and you actually have a bass point to work with, then you can make different EQs and gain adjustments and volume adjustments and all those things that you need, and really really be able to shape your tone a lot more effectively. Try resetting everything to 12 o'clock noon and try finding your tone using this method and see if you come up with a different result from what you'd been using before. Number 6, don't boost the EQ. There are all kinds of uses for an EQ pedal in a guitar signal path. A lot of guys will use them for lead boosts and solo boosts. Actually, one of the best clean boosts that I have ever discovered is a Boss GE7 in the effects loop of an amplifier. That's a great clean boost, a great solo boost, and my friend Dean Klein taught me that trick a number of years ago, and I've been using it ever since. And I know that he still uses it to this day, and not only is he a great guitar player, but he has got one of the sharpest ears for tone, and probably one of the pickiest guys when it comes to guitar tone that I've ever met. That dude knows what he's talking about, and that was a great tip that I picked up. But that's not what I'm talking about with this. Another use for an EQ pedal is, if you're using, if either a distortion pedal or even the distortion on the amplifier, sometimes you just can't quite get that there distortion to sit right there where it needs to be. So you put an EQ pedal there behind the distortion, and that will fix a lot of problems. However, the one mistake that a lot of people make is boosting the mids or boosting the treble or boosting this, that, or the other. That's not the way an EQ is meant to be used in that situation. Again, start with everything flat and then pull out the frequencies that you want less of. You know, if you need a little bit more boost, most EQ pedals like the Boss GE7, my personal favorite is the MXR 10-band EQ. You know, just about every EQ pedal out there is going to have a level control on it of some kind that you can boost those back up. But boosting the frequencies themselves can make, you know, does not necessarily allow those those frequencies might not necessarily mesh real well with everything else either in your chain or other elements in a band situation that might be ushered in a recording or on a stage someplace. You know, you might be getting a little bit too much treble, or you might be getting a little bit too much lower mid-range, you know, something like that, you know, if you boost them up too high. So again, start with everything flat right in the middle, and then pull out those frequencies that you want less of. And the end result will be a much smoother sounding EQ overall. That's all for this list. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that somebody out there gets something out of at least a few of these tips that I have shared with you today. And you know, if so, please leave a comment down below. If you have any experience or any other great tips like this that you have learned, again, please feel free to share those as well. Links to any and all gear used in this episode, as well as any other pertinent links that I need to add, such as Tony Ramsey's YouTube channel, will also be down in the description. Last but not least, please hit the subscribe button and the alert icon right next to it if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.